Hey, welcome to Oopsie Daisy. You've found a place where you can hear real struggles, real stories, and life lessons that are going to help you live real free in Jesus. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to Oopsie Daisy. I am sitting here today with a dear friend who lives only a couple miles down the road, but now she's just a couple feet away from me in my studio. So I'm here with Leah Wacek today. Leah, thanks for joining Oopsie Daisy.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited because you have a lot of wisdom and expertise and a lot of words to say about a topic that, just in general, but also a topic that I think is really crucial right now. It's a topic that's on everybody's hearts and wallets. So today we're going to talk about generosity and giving and tithing. And I just think in our world today when, eggs are expensive and clothes and kids and, incomes are tight. And I just think that the Lord calls us to be generous. He calls us to give. And you and your family have been so faithful in that. And so I just want to hear your story of how you ended up in such an obedient path to giving and generosity that you're in. And just hoping that you can bless us with some tips and strategies and wisdom and just teach us all about it, Sensei.
I love it. Let's do it.
Well, first, I just want to hear a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you're about.
Yeah. So I'm Leah. I have been living in the same town as Amanda for almost 20 years.
Yes.
That is wild to think about. My husband and I got jobs here right out of college and did not at all think that this was our forever town. We didn't grow up here, but it's been good to us. We have a community here. We have a church that we love. We have 4 children now. Our oldest is 16, and then we have a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So the first 3 are girls, and then we've got our son at the end, and everybody's invested in the community in different ways, and we've gotten to be good friends with the hurdlers, especially over the last few years, and with some of our kiddos lining up in age and going to church together, and that's been really fun.
Yeah, Leah and her family have been such a blessing to my life, and not just mine, but like you said, you guys are rooted in the community deeply in what you do and how you serve, and so I'm just really excited to talk about it. You are very knowledgeable about this topic, so I want to know, how did you guys end up in this space of, we are generous people, we will live a generous life? Tell us about this.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I can't pinpoint where it started. My husband and I met in church in college, and I don't know, there must have been a sermon or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I read something, but just the idea of tithing and giving and being generous has always been just a foundation for us, just something that we really wanted to do. Now, we're both teachers, so this is not like we just have tons of money to throw around kind of thing.
So easy to be generous.
There have been times of great joy in giving, and there have been also some really hard times in giving. But I just look back on it all, and it's been so good. Like any instruction that the Lord gives us, it's just the obedience to the Lord, even though it seems counterproductive, right? Like, I don't have enough, and so I don't have enough, and I'm going to give. The thing that I'm lacking seems so counterintuitive.
It's scary.
I
don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. Why would you ask me to give you what I have so little of?
Yes, but it's the story of the loaves and the fishes, right? It's like we give God the little that we have, the not enough, and He multiplies it. It's a miraculous multiplication that doesn't make any sense. It's like the upside down, backwards kingdom of God. And so, we've just always, since we started out making, I don't know, I think my husband started his job making $34,000 a year. I mean,
just rolling in it.
Yeah, right. And I was doing my student teaching, and shortly after we had a baby and we had daycare.
Then you had 17 more babies.
Yes, in our friend group, I get the flack of bringing all the children along, the car full of children.
You got a squad. Yeah. First of all, I have to ask.
Yeah.
Are we talking generosity, just tithing? Because people think tithing is just money, just finances.
Yeah.
Or tell us like your overview. Is this your time? Is this your talent? Is this your treasure too?
Yeah.
How do you guys view this?
Yeah. So it started with just money.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say just money because that's a big deal, right? That's how it started though. It was our income, and we would give the first check was always, I mean, from the very beginning of our marriage, the first paycheck, the first thing we do is write a check to the church or meaningful organizations that we feel the Lord has placed on our hearts to give to. And so we do 10%, and we just find that instruction in the Bible. And when we were making very little money in the very beginning of our careers, it was 10%. And then as our incomes grew and as we got coaching positions and did other things, the 10%, it wasn't a set amount, right? It can grow with your income, and it can also shrink with your income. There were years that I worked part-time when our kids were little. And so that's the beauty of a percentage, right? Is that it can fluctuate with you as you gain income or lose income, but it's always a significant first fruit, right? It's that first thing that I say, Lord, whether it's $100 income, whether it's $1,000 income, I give the first fruit to you.
Yeah.
So we just always saw that in the Lord's instruction to the Israelites, but they weren't giving money.
Yeah.
They were giving their harvest. They were giving the first fruits of their oil and their grain and also their herds. And so we've also really thought about that with our lives. Money is not our only resource. We have things, we have vehicles, we have time, we have talents. And so the longer we have trusted the Lord with this and seen him to be so faithful, the more brave we've become and the more we've experimented in other ways of, okay, well, what does it look like to give away 10% of a month? What does it look like to give away 3 days, Lord? In a 30-day month, could we as a family give away 3 days? Like, in many ways, I'd argue that time is a more precious resource than money because money can always be made. But time that's hard.
Yeah.
And again, we have just found the Lord to be so faithful. When we lay down what feels like it's not enough, when it looks like there's just no way to make these bills, to pay these bills with what's in our checking account, God has been faithful. And we have just seen over and over and over again, he has never let us down. In fact, there was a time when I went to teaching part-time when our second daughter was born. And I mean, we were making very little money. And we were in a small house, and we needed a new vehicle. We had another baby. We, in that time when I was working part-time and we were continuing to write that first check, to give that first check away, it makes absolutely no sense looking back on it, but we were able to buy a bigger home. We were able to take our children on our first international trip.
Wow.
We were able to purchase a bigger vehicle. And so it doesn't make sense. I can't tell you mathematically how it happened, but we have always had enough and more than enough and more than enough. So I just think the faithfulness of the Lord has been so constant that I can't imagine living any other way.
Do you write those things down that happen?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, how do you remember everything? Because you've been doing this for so long and walking this road for so long. I would think that having those like memories and milestones would help you stay faithful as you continue. And when times are harder, when that giving feels like it's ripping out your heart / pocketbook / like your calendar, and just to be able to remember that. So do you have like a journal, or what do you?
Yeah. And, well, I wrote a book about this whole topic and with lots of examples, and I started a website, and nothing's really happened with that at this point, but that's okay. Maybe there's something for that later. But yes, there's documentation of all of it. If only for me and my own children someday to look back and read those stories of how we committed to doing something and we saw the faithfulness of the Lord in the end. There is a documentation of it, but I think too, it's just a knowing that the longer you do it. I don't know if you've ever read the book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction.
I've heard of it though.
Okay. I've probably told you about it. It's by Eugene Peterson, and it's such a good read. And I just think about that in this journey, in so many things in my relationship with the Lord, but especially in this, a lot of it is mundane, right? A lot of it is like the just every 2 weeks, the paychecks come and the first check gets written and we take the next step. And it doesn't always feel big and magnificent. But as I look back over 20 years of doing this, it's just, there's just a straight line behind me. And I feel that, yes, though I've written things down and I can go back and look at them, it's mostly just a knowing. It's mostly just a knowing. And right now, as you can imagine, with 4 kids and activities and just keeping the fridge and the pantry stocked for them and what groceries cost right now and what gas costs and just the price of everything right now, everything feels tight.
Yes.
And I can say that it still feels tight. It's still that like, okay, Lord, we need new brakes, but here we go. I lay it down in the offering plate. It's still hard, but there is like a deep knowing in me that I can trust you, God. I can trust you. And I think that's just when you have a long obedience with God in something, you develop this knowing of his character. And it's like, I can trust you, Lord. I can trust you. And so I think, although the writing it down has been great, and I do like to go back and look at it, it's the relationship that God has built with me through it that is the most special thing to me and probably the most enduring.
Right? And just to know, like you said, that deep knowing that you have this divine safety net, that everything is going to be taken care of, that he is going to be your provider. And I think sometimes we know those things in our head and we read those things and we sing those things in church, but until you're in a spot where you need him to be that for you, you don't really know it. Like, you haven't really lived it. And so to me, sometimes I'm like, God, you don't need anything. You don't need my money. You don't need my voice on a podcast. You don't need any of this. Why do you ask this of me? And I keep being reminded to that, like when we continually empty ourselves of our own resources, our own strength, our own money and everything, that's when he gets to show up for us. And like you said, show us his character, show us his goodness in a way that had we not lived it and felt it and breathed it and cried it, we probably wouldn't have trusted him that same way.
Yeah, and it's the partnership with the Lord too. Like, I think about the story of Jesus telling the disciples to throw the nets overboard, right? And so I think there's 2 sides to this. The one is the obedience on our part, despite the fact that God doesn't need our money. But there's also the like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and God's just going to rain down money on me because he loves me.
Okay, I'm here for that.
That's equally, like, there's a partnership, right?
Yes.
I mean, God could have made those fish jump in the boat. He didn't, right? Like, the disciples have been fishing all night long. All night long. I think sometimes we're just like, God, give me the miracle. You can do this. Give me the miracle, right? But what I learned from that story is God asked them to throw down their nets.
Yes.
He didn't need them to throw down their nets, but there was a partnership there, right? God was like, I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to bring the fish. You're going to do what you can do and throw down your nets. Even though it seems crazy, even though you've been fishing all night long, even though there's been nothing, you're going to throw down your nets, right? There's like a trust thing there. There's a conversation that happens. There's a partnership there. And so I think that, yes, I have learned that God is faithful, but I've also learned that he calls me to be part of his faithfulness. Like, he calls me to be part of the story with him. And I could just sit here and say, Lord, you got to feed my kids.
Yep.
But he calls me to the work that he has given my hands to do. He's given me talents. He has given me opportunities. And there's definitely a partnership there that I value with the Lord that is so beautiful. And the fact that he wants to do it with me,
right,
is so awesome.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of that verse, go and make disciples of all nations. And the two verbs in that are so active, go and make.
Yeah.
And he could have said, just sit here. Like, I got this. It's fine. But yeah, he's calling us to move. He's calling us to take the step. He's calling us to go and just partner with him like that. And that's so wild to me. It's like, you're just partnering with some real bent and broken, not great coworkers, God. But what an honor that, like you said, we get to be part of the story with him. I think that's so cool. I have a question about like the family dynamics of this, because you're so passionate about it, and I can just feel like the genuineness coming off of you with this. First, you and your husband. Were you both right away on the same page at the same time? We're feeling this is the way we're living, or was one of you kind of like pulling the other along a little more?
No, I think from the very beginning we were both like, this is the it's in the word, right? Like this is an instruction that we have. But I will say there are times when my husband feels called to give in an area like that. I'm like, what?
Yes.
I'm not hearing that, right? Or where I feel really strongly that this person or this organization or whatever is where I want our dollars to go. Yeah. And so, we communicate about that. Like nobody is the one that's in charge of that. I mean, if he's really not feeling it, then, I can just submit and say, okay, we'll revisit that another time. Yeah, I think we've always just both been on board with it. And okay, but then also with our kids, right?
Yes.
So like they're selfish people, just like I am and my husband, and they're growing and learning. And so it was awesome that Jason and I kind of established this before they came along, because this has just always been what they've known. Like, we're doing this, we're going here, we're going to make this, we're going to deliver this. But it's also been really great to get them involved in it and to kind of break them of some of their selfish habits and to really say to them, like, this is a value that our family has. This is a foundation that we stand on. And to be able to explain to them, this is where we get it from. This is what, look, God didn't ask the Israelites to give him their leftovers. God didn't ask the Israelites to give him the sheep that was weak and
the half dead one in the back,
right? That they were like having trouble with. Like, okay, I'll sacrifice this one, Lord.
His leg was like, gone anyway, so I just take him.
He was like, give me the strongest, most beautiful lamb. Wow. I mean, think about that. Like, that was the one that they would have used to mate with another strong, beautiful animal, whether it was like a cattle or a lamb or whatever, right? And that would bring more for them in the future. And that was the one.
Oh, I've never thought of it that way. That is like not a threat to the next generation, but that would have brought like a multiplication in their finances, in their well-being. And he asked for that. Well, I'm a little bit blown
the first and the best, right? Yes. And so that's kind of been a motto in our family. Like, we give our first and our best. And that's been so good with our kids, even in their effort, right? And things like, are you giving your first and your best right now? Are you giving your first and your best to your family? Are you giving your first and your best in your education? So that's been a really great thing that we've been able to just like a touchstone that we've been able to go back to with them. And now we've got a 16-year-old who's making money, and she just purchased a car for herself. Yeah. And so, we're talking about more than just a $10 here and $20 here. She's, we've got hundreds of dollars now that she's managing. And so we're really talking to her about what this looks like and how trusting Jesus has been the best insurance policy that we could have ever made for ourselves. And that it's been very practical, right? Like you said, the songs we sing, the verses that we read in the Bible, but like going back to that idea of giving the first and the best, like even something as simple as like when the different groups come around to collect food, right? For like the food pantry. I've done this many times, so I don't want anyone to feel judged when they hear me say this, but like it's so easy to go in the pantry and be like, okay, well, I bought these granola bars and the kids didn't really like them, so I'm going to donate those.
Yeah.
Or like, here's this, I bought a 14 pack of pumpkin at Costco to make pumpkin bread and I got 13 cans left over, right?
Yes.
Or whatever. Or here's this thing it's about to
Here's
expire.
my garbanzo beans that I was going to make something healthy out of, and it's not happening.
Right. It's this thing that's about to expire, but still got 3 weeks left on it. Somebody will grab it, you know? I've done that many times.
Yes.
But what does it look like to go into our pantry and with my kid next to me say, those granola bars that you love that I just bought for you, those are going.
Wow.
We're giving those away, right? Because that is the first and the best. Or that, you know, those Cheez-Its that you just asked me for that I just brought home from the store yesterday that you were going to pack in your lunch tomorrow. That's what we're going to give away. So that's the first and the best. And if you were the one receiving this, would you want the garbanzo beans or would you want the Cheez-Its, right?
Wow.
And so things like that have been really great to do with our kids. And we haven't always done it perfectly. Yeah. But I hope that as a teacher, I know too, it's just, we were a selfish generation and our kids are living in a selfish generation. It's just part of living in the world. And you got to practice that with your kids, right? So even things like time, as we've really worked on giving away our time, okay, well, we have this and this and this planned for a Saturday afternoon, but we also have this opportunity to go and pack food or deliver meals, and we're going to choose to do that. We're going to choose to give away a really precious commodity right now, which is time. Yeah. And it's not always popular with our kids. We have drugged them kicking and screaming.
That was my question. I'm like, is everybody on board in the van, headed there and just happy to be serving the Lord? Or is there like words and grumbles and huffing and puffing?
There's words and grumbles, but I feel like at the end, we all get over it. We all get over it, and we're together. And sometimes I think that's the best thing, right? When we say, no, we're doing this, it's like, okay, well, you're not off doing this and you're not off at that friend's house, but we're together. And so that's where it's that good measure pressed down, overflowing into our laps. Like when we give, the Lord gives us back to, we get to be with our kids for a whole Saturday when we do this. Instead of them biking off to the park which there's nothing wrong with that. But when we think it's a sacrifice, it ends up being this beautiful thing, this beautiful memory that we have together. And so 100 times out of 100, when we have given on the hard days and the good days and the days where it feels really tight, it has always come back to us multiplied. And that's another thing that we talk to our kids about too, is like, what do you need right now? You need a friend, you got to be a friend, right? Like when we need money, it doesn't seem to make any sense, but like we give money. We give money. We don't give to get. We give because God calls us to. He says, give us that really valuable first fruit, and I will take care of you. Yeah. I will multiply it back to you. I will give you the good measure flowing over onto your lap. You don't feel good? You need health right now? You should pray for someone else who you know is sick. Like find the thing that you need and give it away. Hold it with an open hand. God is a good father. Can I ever imagine my kids coming to me with a need and not meeting it?
Right.
And
no, thanks. I don't feel like that right now. You don't deserve that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that, but that's that's how we in our nature, that's how we want to treat God, right? Like he won't do it for me. He can't do it for me. It's like, he will. And it's not about testing God. It's not about getting something in return. It's about obeying. It's about just taking that next step, that long obedience, and then being able to look back on your life and say, for decades, Lord, you have been good to me.
Yes.
You've been so good to me. And so we try to involve our kids with it as much as we can. Obviously, a lot of the financial giving is between my husband and I. But they see us give. They know that happens first before we pay for sports, before we pay for, whatever else we want or need in the month. And sometimes we have to say no to some things. And we just tell the kids that we trust the Lord. We trust the Lord. He's going to bring it back to us.
Right.
And nothing is as important as investing in the kingdom.
Love that. So you mentioned little things like granola bars all the way up to packing meals and delivering things and, packing food boxes up in the cities or whatever that might look like. Have you seen little things and big things like fruits in your kid's life from it? Like, are you noticing that the seeds you're planting are sprouting?
With our oldest, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Like she's really starting to catch on to it. And we have really great kids, but kids are another long obedience.
Oh, yeah.
It's a long obedience, right? Just when you think you're getting somewhere, it's like, but yeah, they're great kids. And I think a lot of the times we'll hear something 6 months later from someone who will say they saw this at church or they saw this at school. And so, I believe that God is working in them and even moving in them in the times when we're not watching.
Yes.
I hope, right? Like that's the real test. When I'm watching you,
right?
and I'm giving you the eye.
I know.
Like,
are you doing it just because I'm giving you the weird side eye about it?
Is this your first? Is this your best?
Right.
So yeah, I do. I see God moving in their lives, but I also see them being kids.
Absolutely.
And needing that correction.
I always say that to our kids too, is that within the family and with your parents, you get to practice.
Yeah.
You get to practice what it looks like to follow Jesus. You get to practice what it looks like to be a compassionate human being. And this is the place where you can show your really ugly side or your really greedy side or, your really selfish side. And we can all work together to lay that down and figure out what that looks like before I send you out in the big bad world and you're, on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they're growing in it. And I think part of it maybe I don't always even see just because it's been such a practice and a norm for our life.
Yeah.
But yeah, God is faithful. And I have to always tell myself in parenting, like God can fill in the gaps. And I never want it to be like we've said to the kids, especially to our oldest, who again is making money, she's got a job. We're not going to force you to give to God. We're not going to force you to do anything. That's between you and the Lord, right? But this is what we know. This is what we've lived. This is what we've read in God's word. This is where we see him talk about it. And so this is what we think is wise.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be between her and the Lord.
Oh, those are good seeds to plant. Because like in my nature and who I am as a person, I'm like, give me your hand. I will put it in the offering with you. Like I'm going to put your hand in that basket for you. And then you'll see what happens because it comes from a good place where I want them to experience those things. And I want them to see, how the Lord takes care of us and blesses us and things like that. But just the idea of trusting the Lord in that you reap what you sow and the seeds that are being planted, it's his job to grow them, to cultivate them. You're planting them and doing your role, but he's the one that's producing the fruit later on.
Yeah.
But that's so hard. Like I have a really hard time laying off my kids.
Yeah.
And, you want them to experience it. And I think sometimes too, people think, okay, if I give $10, then the Lord's going to bless me with $10 back. Or if I give 5 cans of food, then my blessing has to come in like a food version.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Not at all.
And so it's hard, I think, for them to recognize it even where if they are giving obediently and they are following, what's laid out in scripture, to make them understand that you may not even recognize a blessing when it comes your way, but also you might not see it on this side of heaven.
Absolutely.
And we tell our kids all the time, you store up those treasures in heaven. You are storing up treasures in heaven. And regardless of if you see the earthly blessing now, there is something waiting for you later. But who wants that when you're 12? I would like somebody to drop off a package of fake nails for me. And, that I want to be blessed that way. I don't want to put
but
my
there
heavenly
is kind
treasure.
of, I totally get what you're saying with that, but there is kind of the, I don't know if you want to call it like a treasure hunt or like a scavenger hunt kind of like mindset that they can have with it of be like, okay, be on the lookout about how God's going to take care of that. That thing that was hard for you to do, what, like open your eyes to what is God doing in my life. And I think it's awesome to tell kids. Sometimes we don't see it. Yeah. Sometimes we don't know. One thing that has been really hard for us and that we've had to work through is like what happens with that gift and wanting to control what happens with that gift, right? Because like I'm going to give it and you're going to use it for what you tell me you're going to use it for, right? You're not going to use it for something else. And the Lord has really had to work on my heart with that and be like, that's between them and me. Your obedience is between me and you. And you don't get to control them. They might squander it. They might lose it. They might do all sorts of things with it that you would think are evil. Yeah. But you don't get to control that. I deal with them and I deal with you, and your relationship with me, I'm asking you to be obedient in this thing. Now, sometimes, here's the other thing. We don't give every opportunity that there is, right? Like there has to be some wisdom and some discernment in that. Like there are so many organizations and people that need money and time and talents, and like you can burn yourself out really fast living this way. So we got to be discerning about like what is God calling us to give. And I wouldn't say that I have like an audible, like the voice of the Lord saying you need to give here, but like I pay attention. I pray every day, like, Lord, I want to be open to awe and to obedience. Like I don't want to be so stressed or so busy today that I don't see that.
Love that.
And so when I feel that something is right, I talk to my husband about it and we come to a decision about it. And then we have to let it go. Yes. We have to let it go. Like it's out of our hands and it's in your hands now, Lord. And what you do with that and that person that's on them.
That's hard for me. And this is why too, I think it's so important to be on the same page as your spouse, because for me, I would literally like skip down the street and just take my pockets of cash and just throw it. Like that's how
see you doing it.
Sounds so bad, but like for me, money is I'm like, oh, you can make it again. It's fine. We'll be fine. And I have just this like wild like whatever, it's fine. And I'm married to someone who is very frugal, very great with finances. And so I really have to lean on him to kind of rein me in a little bit and be like, you don't have to give everything.
Right.
You don't have to give to everybody, every organization. You can't save every puppy in the pound either. You just can't go giving it all. I wanted to ask you too, when you talked about, your good giving may not go to a good cause always. I just had this conversation the other day. I'm curious your take on it. How do you handle homeless people or people with signs at stoplights? Like, what do you do? What's your take?
So a lot of the times we have a bag in the back of our car that I just have packed with like non-perishables. So I'll have like deodorant and toothpaste and a couple toothbrushes and some peanut butter and whatever, just a bag full of stuff that can just sit in my car.
Yeah.
And I'll hand that to them. Yeah. Another thing you can keep on hand is gift cards. Like have like 5 in my wallet at any time, like a Subway gift card or a gas gift card. And I'll just hand that. And I don't always stop. That's where everybody has to have their own relationship with the Lord, where they obey, right? Like God is not calling us to be broke. God is not calling us to be exhausted. God is calling us to give away our first and our best, And so those are some things that we do. I rarely give out cash. Yeah. But even as I say this, another thing that I'm thinking about that I think is really important is when you live this way and have this as just like a foundational piece of your life, it is easy to become prideful maybe, or to think that you're not the one that ever needs help. Ooh. And so we always have to just remain humble with it too, because give with the thought in my mind that tomorrow I could be the one in need.
Yes.
Tomorrow I could be the one that needs help, whether it's a meal, whether it's help with my kids because I got to run here and my husband's got to run there. And like, whether it's money, there have been times where we've been the ones in need, and the Lord has provided for us. And so I never want it to be this like, well, I have this figured out and I have these tips and tricks and I have this money and I'm just over here like, even sometimes something like this, just having a conversation about it is like, I want to be obedient to even what the Lord says in scripture about like, do your giving in secret. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. I've kind of experimented a little bit with social media of like, I feel like this is so great and such a like amazing experience to live this way with the Lord and to depend on him so fully. And I see all these people that are stressed out about money and I just like want to tell them about it. But then I don't ever want it to turn into like, here's me with all these great ideas and this is what we're doing and everybody should look at us. Like, I want to always keep the humility of we're in a family. We're in the family of God and we take care of each other. Like we tell that to our kids all the time. Families take care of each other. Are you taking care of your brother right now? Are you taking care of your sister right now? Are you taking care of mom right now? And so we're in a family here, whether it be our church family, whether it just be the human family that we're in, where we take care of each other and we recognize that, yes, I'm in a position today to help take care of you, but I recognize that tomorrow I may be the one in need.
Yes.
In a variety of different ways. And that's why I think it's so important too, not to just think about money. Like sometimes it's time, right? Like sometimes I give away my time knowing that 2 months from now, somebody's going to come help me with something that I need. Like, for example, our deck was heaving and this great guy that I work with at school came over and fixed our deck and left and like we tried to pay him. He was like, no, I love doing this kind of stuff. And it was just like, that's like a tangible example of like, there's been times where we've done some things, helped some people, even though it was maybe inconvenient or cost us some time at home, some time with our kids. And then here's somebody else's on the other side helping. And that's a small example, but I think we always have to remember we're just this family and we're just trying to help each other out and to never get like prideful in our giving because it really is about being humble and just taking care of the person in front of you.
It says to me that you guys do vulnerability well, whether it's recognizing it in somebody else, their need, being a comfortable place for somebody else to explain their need to you. I mean, I know you guys have, helped people out on a personal level and things like that. I think that means you guys are building relationships enough that you're recognizing these needs. Because if you're just passing people on the street and just waving in a van, you're never going to know what anybody needs. And so you're getting close and you're seeing the nitty gritty. But then on the other side of that is that you guys are able to be vulnerable and say, this is the need we have. And that's something that I know I don't do it well. Like my husband does, thank God. Like I would crumble without him because I am like, I'll figure it out. And I'm guilty of sitting there going, okay, God, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to sit here by myself and I'm going to ask you for help. And it doesn't happen. And how many times have I missed his provision because I'm not A, giving to somebody else perhaps, or B, even willing to be vulnerable enough to explain my own need to somebody. So you're just really challenging me too about this idea of digging in with people enough to A, know what they're going through, and B, humbling yourself to say, this time we need something. And that's just a huge part of, like you said, taking care of each other, taking care of people, and just giving of yourself that way and of your time.
And I think you hit on something really important there of like knowing people enough to know their need. To be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of using our resources to stop someone on the corner. I do it. I have done it. But to me, it's so much more impactful to know the person and to know the need,
Yes.
and to let them into my life and know my needs. So we try to do a lot of things like right here in our community. But we also we live in a small community. There's not a ton of opportunities here as far as like getting our kids involved in like a situation where they would be able to see something that we don't have in our community. So we do some of that, but there is something really beautiful about, I would say, like just even in our church family, just being aware, of like who needs a friend, and who needs rent money this month, and who needs their cat fostered for a couple months.
I don't think I've talked about this on a podcast yet. We're fostering 2 cats here that somebody had a need, and
look at you.
I didn't even think about that as a generosity thing. I was like, we got space, we got litter boxes.
But that's the thing. So many people just think about money. And money is a big thing because it is one of the hardest things to let go. But you can live a generous life in so many areas. Like, what do I have that, think about our vehicles, right? People need rides. People need to borrow a vehicle from time to time. I think about helping out with people's kids, getting kids places where they need to go. I think about like the books on my shelves, the clothes in my closet. There's so much more to living a generous life than writing a check. And sometimes it's writing that check. Sometimes that can be very, very difficult because money is so important to us and to our livelihood. But sometimes writing a check is much easier than like letting somebody hop in your car with you and having a 10-minute conversation with this person to get them, to wherever they need to go. Like that's like real life.
Oh,
that's harder than
shooting darts at me over here because that's what I want to do. Here's my checkbook. That's fine with me because I don't feel that either. That doesn't inconvenience me as much.
Yeah.
It seems more, it's more impersonal.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to like understand the biblical idea of giving, because it wasn't money. Like the initial instruction was not with money, right? It was with resources, the resources that these people had. So when we look at our lives as the resources that we have, our talents, our treasure, our time, right? Like what does that look like when my husband is a 3rd grade teacher and there's some 3rd grade boy that doesn't want to read, right? And he just takes time to sit down with this kid and show him some great books. Like that's your talent. Like he has a talent for that.
Yeah.
And so that's his talent and his time, but it doesn't cost us anything to be generous in that way. So I don't want to do anything in my life that's not rooted in scripture. So for somebody to just be like, well, the church needs to run, so you guys need to give money, like that's not the idea of tithing. The idea of tithing and living a generous life is rooted in the instruction to give our first and our best to the Lord. And that certainly can be money. Like we're talking about our income, the thing that we work for. Same thing as the Israelites. They planted it, they harvest it. That's what they can use to get what they need. However, I like the idea of more thinking about the resources that I have and how I can be generous with those resources than just money. It's a resource. Yeah. But there's so many other things that we can consider.
Do you track your other resources? I mean, you're very specific about 10% of your finances, but say it's your time. Do you guys track that?
We have. Yeah. We did several years where we endeavored to give away 36 days in a year, which led us to this orphanage in the Dominican Republic that we love. And so we spent like a week there. And so, yeah, we have gone through seasons like that. That's kind of where the idea for my book came from. And so that's been great. But I also don't want to be like beholden to some sort of spreadsheet either. Yeah. Like I want to be so good at giving that it just happens in my life. I want to trust the Lord so much that I don't have to write it down and check to see that I've given 10%. I just want to be able to trust him, that when I hear him and feel him giving me that nudge to go, to do, to serve, to write the check, to give the cash, that I don't need to keep track of it to just be a generous person.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes it's a good way to start, right? Is to be like, okay, here's my year, or maybe a month, right? Here's my month. Can I give away 3 days this month? That's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
I think in a small town too, it's hard. Because immediately when you go, I want to give my time away, you think, I'm going to serve meals at a homeless shelter, or I'm going to go to feed my starving children and do all of those things. But like you said, it doesn't have to be these big things. It's just these little moments of your life. And also that's kind of hard to track too. Like, here's 10% of my time. I drove somebody to the work for 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's weird.
Exactly. But I mean, you do things like just having the girls over here to hang out and to talk about the Lord and do a bonfire.
To pierce ears.
Yes.
I pierce a lot of teenage girls' ears here.
Okay, right there. That is, I have not written this down. I've not documented it as a blessing of the Lord that has come back to me. But I would say that the amount of money that Amanda has saved my family and not having to take my children to the mall to get their ears pierced has been a financial outpouring back into my life.
There you go. Okay, so what are 3 things that somebody could literally hear this and go out the next day and do in their local town, store, neighborhood?
I would say start with tithing your income.
Yeah.
I would say just try it for a month. Just try it I guarantee you will not be short. You'll not be short. Now, if 10% is like you cannot do 10%, like set a percentage for yourself. Like pray with the Lord, ask the Lord. See if you can give 5%. See if you can give 2%. See if you can give 2% this month and 3% next month and 4% the month after that. For me, that's the most like just straightforward, right? Where it's just like, this is an amount. I'm going to give it. I'm going to trust the Lord. And then like you said, like journal or document or talk to somebody and be like, okay, I gave this amount. This is what I have left in bills this month. There's no way that this is happening. And then literally make yourself document how it happened. Like, how did you get to the end of the month? Where did the surprises come? How did something happen that you didn't think was going to happen? It's a really cool adventure. It really is. So I would say that is a cool thing that I think everyone should try. I cannot imagine not doing it, not living this way. I know that sounds crazy, especially when we have seen our savings account really dwindle with some big things that have happened over the last couple of years. I will never stop doing this. It's too exciting. The Lord is too good. So I think that would probably be the biggest one. Another one that I would say is figure out where you can give some time. It would be not easy, but I think some people might have the tendency to just like dive into the deep end on this, and you have to have boundaries too. I mean, you can't quit your job. You can't like all of a sudden not show up for your family anymore because you're like at the local soup kitchen every single night. But like, can you find something? Can you find a afternoon? Can you find a evening? There is no lack of places that need help.
Yes.
I mean, a quick Google search, like where can I donate time within a 60-mile radius of me? I know there's great organizations here around us that are always looking for help. Even think beyond like a food shelf or a soup kitchen, which is great. Those are great places. But like, I know we have like a ranch not far from us where they do horse therapy for kids, and they will take people to muck stalls, and they will take people to build things, and they will take people to paint. You can think beyond kind of those places that people kind of immediately think of. I mean, schools will take people to come in and read. Hospitals will take people to come in and rock babies. Nursing homes will take people to come in and play the piano, or there's lots of opportunities. And then I would challenge you, if you do have a pantry or something like that in your town, to go into your pantry and take the best. Take the best things. Or if you're doing a meal for someone, one thing that I learned I got put in my place was I was doing a meal for someone, and it was like through a group, And I asked the question, so like, do we do a dessert for them? And the lady who was running it said, well, do you eat dessert? And I was like, yep. I needed that. Yeah. I needed that, right? Yes. Like, why wouldn't I make a dessert, right? And I make a beautiful dessert. And really think about it as like, okay, what if Jesus was standing here? Would I give him my garbanzo beans? Or would I give him, you know, a feast?
Right.
So I think tithe, see what you can do with your tithe. Start praying about that. Be bold. This is not a hostage situation.
Yeah.
You can tithe for a month and decide to pull back or give more.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that you're probably going to be inspired to give even more.
Absolutely.
But do that. Find a place you can give some time. And then if you have an opportunity to give a physical thing, whether it be like a clothes donation or a food donation, like pick out your best stuff. And remember that you're not giving it to the person. You're giving this unto the Lord. Mm-hmm. And when you frame it in that way, it's not hard. Mm-hmm. It's like so beautiful to give him the best. If he was like standing in my house right now, what kind of a meal would I make for him?
Yeah. He would get some dessert.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming on, Leah. This has been amazing. And I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll have you on.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk next time. Thanks for listening to Oopsie Daisy. If this message hit your heart, make sure to share it with somebody, encourage somebody else, and most of all, spread Jesus. Then follow the Oopsie Daisy Girl on all social media platforms or find more at AmandaHerdler.com. That's Amanda, HIRDLER.com.